Hi everyone, welcome into the Chicago Sun-Times studio for another episode of Sun-Times Game Week. I'm back in the studio with the gang. Annie Costable here alongside Michael O'Brien, Beth Long. We also want to give a shout out to ABC, our content partner, and all of the viewers that are watching along on their Facebook live stream as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. We've got a lot to cover today. A lot of news. That's always our first topic of the day. Then we're going to go into our Super 25, the new reveal. We're going to review Week 6, preview Week 7, and wrap it up for you. So without further ado, let's get into some of those news topics. They are basketball related. I'm sure you were wondering.
Shocker.
Shocked by that fact.
Basically, all Joe Henriksen did was write stories for the last week. There wasn't a lot happening. So if you're a basketball fan that hasn't been checking out the site a ton, you've missed a lot. We'll start it out with, I think the biggest news was two big transfers to two teams that were already going to be very good. Bennett picked up a player from Baltimore. His name's Kendrick. I believe it's pronounced Tachua, but I'm not sure. 6'6", strong kid. I watched a little bit. There was kind of some clips of him online, and he's a senior. He's just going to be exactly what they need. You know, he's just an athletic force in the post. They've already got a lot of size, so they're just going to be one of the bigger teams around. And Joe Henriksen thinks, he went to an open gym and saw him play. He thinks he's top 15 in the class, which that's a huge addition for Bennett. And, you know, Gene Heidkamp's one of the best coaches in the state. They're going to be loaded this year, so up arrow for Bennett, for sure. Yes.
Plus one.
Evanston, who might be the preseason number one, maybe not, might be number two, but one of the best teams. They've got everybody coming back except maybe one guy from last year. They added Louis Lesmond. He is from France. He's on the French national team for the under 16. His dad played at Purdue. He's a 6'5" sophomore. Know a little less about him. Sounds like he's going to be an excellent, addition to that sophomore class, which is loaded. They played 3 freshmen last year that were very good.
Evanston, correct me if I'm wrong, lost to Whitney Young in the state championship, or how did they finish last season?
You're going to make me remember things.
They made it.
Yeah, they made it to state,
right.
And they must have lost to Young because Young lost to Belleville West in the title game.
So they lost to Whitney Young before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they lost to Whitney Young the year before, I believe, as well.
So is this the year Evanston can push past Whitney Young and others?
I don't know. They're still young. They're very young, but they're really good. And this is, just a huge addition. They've got Lance Jones coming back, who's going to Southern Illinois. Jaheim Holden, Blake Peters, who made that crazy shot that went viral on ESPN, and Jalen Gibson. So they have a ton of talent. Maybe it is the year, we always put the city teams, they've just won so much.
Right, it's hard to bet against the city teams.
Yeah, it's very hard to bet against Young, and they're loaded, but Evanston definitely has, more than enough to win a state title this year, which I'm not sure anybody's really said before.
Before we rotate too much, what is Young going to look like? Because basketball season is right around the corner. While we're talking about it, we might as well dive in a little bit. What is Young going to look like this year?
I mean, they added DJ Stewart from Fenwick, who's one of the best players in the state. They already have Tyler Beard, who he didn't play most of last year. He came on his sophomore year. He came on and he played really well at the end, but he had a fantastic summer. He's a top 100 player in the country now. So with the backcourt with him and DJ Stewart, and just a lot of really good role players they have. They're not star-studded as much as some of these other teams, but they're just loaded with kids who can play. I wouldn't be surprised, if they run the table, all season long as number one. They're that good.
Yeah. Next up?
Yeah, some commitments. DeJuan Gordon from Curie committed to Kansas State. DeJuan Gordon's another kid who really came on near the end of the season. I don't think he was even starting most of the year for Curie, but by the end of the year, he was their best player by far. He had an excellent summer. He's going to be one to watch this year. I think Joe's got him ranked number 3 in the class. So he's definitely an excellent player. And then this guy, Evan Taylor from Glenbard West. Glenbard West now has 2 D1 players in the last 5 years after Justin Pierce went, definitely a football school, not a basketball school. They're still might not be a great team this year, but he committed to Southern Illinois University. He's a really interesting player. He's long, he can shoot really well, gets his own shot. I'm very excited to see what he's like senior year, and getting this college thing out of the way will probably help as well. And then the big news.
Big news, drum roll. Yes.
Coming up at 6 o'clock, E.J. Liddell from Belleville West is making his college choice. He was Mr. Basketball last year, led Belleville West to the state title. He's down to Ohio State, Illinois, and Missouri. indications are that it's most likely going to be Ohio State. Don't quote me on that, but Illinois people seem a little depressed at this point.
Moods are down for Illinois today.
And it's kind of getting close to crisis mode for Illinois. Signing day is like 40 days away, and they don't have a player in the 2019 class. I believe they have 3 scholarships to fill, and no one has taken one, and that's going to start to get awkward.
I think it's probably already awkward.
Yes.
Yeah, it's probably already awkward for Illinois, but what contributes to that? What's the reason for that right now?
I mean, this is also kind of upsetting for Illinois fans, but these kids now, a 16, 17-year-old, in their conscious sporting life of watching sports, has never seen Illinois be good.
Right.
We all think back, it feels like it wasn't that long ago they were playing for the national title, but time flies quick, and these kids were young, and they don't make the tournament regularly.
No.
So nobody wants to play for a college that doesn't go to the tournament.
With recruiting, a recruiting background too, like you're looking at Illinois, who hasn't been in the tournament, and basketball recruiting is a little more short-sighted than football. Like these football kids are like, I'm going to spend 5 years at this school, so I'm going to help rebuild the program. And in basketball, that's not the hope, right?
No,
they're not trying to do that.
Yeah, players are expecting to stay 1 year, maybe 2. Most of them want to be in and out, one and done. And when you're not making the tournament, when you're not playing on a national stage, there's not a lot to commit to. But I think it's an interesting conversation because you do meet a lot of these Chicago kids who, when it's brought up, when they're being recruited by in-state colleges, a lot of them, on the record say how they'd love to play for an in-state program, this and that. I think it's just going to take some excitement around some of these in-state programs. We saw it with Loyola. They got a couple of big commitments. Illinois is going to have something exciting happen for them to steal some of these kids that are borderline commits to the program. So.
If Ayo Dosunmu has a big year for them, that's going to get Illinois talked about a ton in the city. That'll be huge for them. That's the best way forward right now, is for Ayo Dosunmu to really succeed and get the public league excited about Illinois. I think that would help a lot.
Definitely.
As far as E.J. Liddell, too, I think Mark Smith, who was Mr. Basketball 2 years ago, was also from Belleville. Things didn't go well for him at Illinois. He transferred after 1 year. And those kids all know one another really well down there, so I'm sure that didn't help Illinois' chances. But who knows? Maybe we'll get a shocking surprise at 6 o'clock.
Before we move on to football just yet, with EJ being back at Belleville, are they the shoo-in to win the state championship again this year, or did they lose enough players where we could see a team like Evanston sneak in, Whitney Young, some of these other Chicago teams?
They've got almost everything back.
Okay.
They're going to be very, very good. It's tough though, that second year, to kind of keep the intensity up and repeat. It's, Simeon did it 4 times in a row not too long ago, but I don't know. I wouldn't put them, a runaway favorite, because Young is definitely good. Evanston's going to be a year older. All those kids who were there last year got so much experience. So I think it's definitely going to be up for grabs. I wouldn't put them as a runaway favorite.
Reminder, send us your questions throughout the show. We still have a little over 20 minutes left. So please, any questions about basketball, football, we're here for the next 22 minutes, and we'd love to answer your questions. Next up on the topic of to-dos is our Super 25 reveal. It was an exciting week. A lot of running clocks. We talked about this before the show started. It was a blowout week.
Yeah, there were 9 40-plus point wins in the top 15 this week.
One of those was between number 1 and number 4.
Yes.
Which we were surprised about. But let's get into that reveal. Why don't you tell us who's in, who's out, and why?
There is one very notable program that is out. I will leave that to your imagination until we get through them. Number 25, though, a new team, a new face, Rolling Meadows, a perfect 6-0. Number 24, another perfect 6-0, Hillcrest. Hillcrest, I do want to point out, is averaging 42 points on offense and only allowing 12 points. So that's the reason why Hillcrest jumped above Rolling Meadows, just to get in those rankings at 24. 23, I see Catholic moves up 2 slots. Bolingbrook does the same, 22. 21, Hinsdale Central. 20, Prairie Ridge with a big win at Jacobs. Number 19, Wheaton Warrenville South with a not so big win at Wheaton North, 10-3, but still a win nonetheless. So you can move up a few spots. Number 18, our highest newcomer this week at a perfect 6-0, Glenbard East. They have 2 really quality wins, which is why they slotted up this high in West Aurora and South Elgin. Both those teams are 5-1. Phillips stays in at number 17 with a 4-2 with a pretty large win. Another running clock. Speaking of 42-0 over Curie. 16 Oswego East, 15 Willowbrook, 14 Montini. You'll notice there is no Loyola. That's the one that's missing.
Dun, dun, dun.
13, Cary Grove. 12, Marist. 11, Richards. 10, Mount Carmel. 9, Glenbard West. 8, Maine South. 7, Brother Rice in the closest game in the entire top 10 with a 21-14 win over St. Rita, who was fighting for their lives and did not end up being, they will not be eligible for the playoffs after that loss to Rice, even if they win out. 6, Simeon. 5, Homewood Flossmoor, only falling 1 spot. It's still a really good team. 4, Oswego. 3, Nazareth. 2, Batavia. And number 1, no surprise at all, Lincoln Way East.
Not surprising at all after seeing them. That was my first time seeing them this season. You saw them a few weeks earlier.
Yeah.
They just are like a smooth sailing ship. They just look amazing out there.
It's hard to pinpoint what the best part of the team is.
They're so big.
And okay, they're
And
big,
fast.
they're fast,
And long
they're
and
big,
good.
They're big, they're fast, they're strong, and their bench. Any guy that comes out, someone else is coming in that is just as good. Like their bench players, their backups can play first string for numerous other programs around that area in the state. So Lincoln Way East not only has, the talent that's starting for them, but the talent that's right behind them too.
The coaching staff wouldn't admit this, but we did ask off the record, hey, is this the best team that you ever had? And they were like, oh no, gave us a very politically correct answer, and that may be one of the best teams I've seen since covering high school football in the last 7 years.
I think that area too. I mean, anytime you're talking about any teams in that area is just filled with talented football players, and I think something that speaks to that were all the recruiting coaches that we saw at the game.
Yep.
Iowa was there, Purdue was there, Stanford was there.
Illinois.
Who am I missing? Illinois was there, and they were all on Lincoln Way East sideline.
And when we asked them, also off the record, hey, who are you here to see? Every single one was like, AJ Henning.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Henning
was the guy.
I wonder, Jack Balt's committed to
Illinois State.
Yeah.
He's a good player.
I'm wondering if
that'll change.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing because, let's talk about that a little bit. Did he look that good, and is that surprising, or is that something that he continues to grow and is going to continue to get better?
He was a bit of a late bloomer when it comes to the recruiting trail. Kids are getting recruited in their freshman and sophomore year at this point, and if you don't look like a complete athlete like an AJ Henning, when he was a sophomore, he looked like a complete ridiculously good football player. Balt has kind of grown into his size, grown into his stature, grown into the ability that he has as a quarterback.
He's a tall, lanky kid. When he fills out,
and he's starting to. He's
Right.
starting to fill out. He's every bit of probably 6'4", 6'5", as he's
6'5",
listed at.
yeah, he's
every bit of that.
His
you
accuracy,
can tell
though,
he's starting
too.
to put on weight, which is what interests college programs. And this is one of the most underrated parts of recruiting. Quarterbacks change hands a lot in recruiting because people are not willing to buy in until they see their 3 or 5 game senior film. And Illinois State already has bought into him, hey, we like you, we want to offer you, we were the first ones in on you. And the Big Ten comes in late on quarterbacks.
Well, it's interesting too with the early signing period how that all plays out now because, when you're a top recruited kid and you commit during the early signing period, well, okay, let's just throw out a name here. So Illinois gets all their top kids. Well, they drop those second tier kids. Well, if a second tier kid commits during the early signing period and then a top tier kid is playing that waiting game, they could lose their spot. So we could see a kid like Jack Baltz get a late offer, commit during the early signing period, take advantage of that, and then, another top player potentially fall out of the
there's
mix.
always a ton of shuffling.
The early signing period
days
is
before.
interesting in football too. I know we were talking about a little bit in basketball. Last year was the first year, and nothing changed in Illinois. Every kid that had committed signed, with the exception, I believe, of one really top athlete, and he was very much wavering. And I don't know whether it's just like you're looking for the longevity, like we were talking about a little bit earlier in a football program, or you're looking to like change the tide. Like so many kids have said that have committed to Illinois, like I believe Lovey is doing something different here, and I want to buy in for 5 years. But the early signing